All right. Good morning, everybody. By the way, I always notice the difference of order when Zevi does it and when Randy does it in terms of between the recording and the muting. So anyway, fine. But we left off at the bottom of Mishnah of Kuf Aleph Amud Beis. Today's Daf Kuf Beis. We're actually going to get up to the bottom Mishnah on the bottom of Kuf Beis. So those of you who have to leave early, so you know we're getting up to that Mishnah, which will be a little bit short. But because after this we'll have 3 days with 2.5 blots, because the last Daf is only one Amud. Anyhow, so the proper pronunciation, next word, first word of the Mishnah, neger, right? Neger. Right, I just confirm with the Nakudos in the art school, right? So neger sheyesh beroisho glustra. You have we're discussing different types, different things that were done in the mikdash or not, in terms of whether there was when it comes to binyan, right? When it comes to something that is a drabanan, right? Is it type of bona or not? Drabanan. So it says neger sheyesh beroisho glustra. So you have a door bolt, but at the end there's a knob. So in other words, a door bolt can just be something, a bolt, in other words, can be any random thing, can be used as a bolt. But if it has a knob, it's already very, very similar to a kli. So negashesh barosha glustra, Rabbi Eliezer Oiser, Rabbi Yosi Mater. Rabbi Eliezer says it is aser. Excuse me. It's aser. And Rabbi Yosi says it's mutter. So Rabbi Eliezer says, no, since you're bolting the door in, you're fastening it to the ground. Oftentimes their bolts went into the ground. You know, a lot of our doors are, sideways, but it goes into the ground. So says Rabbi Eliezer, that's too much like bona, and therefore it's aser. And Rabbi Yosef says mutter. And Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Ma'isa b'Knesset b'Tveria sheyunogim b'heter. There's a nice in the Knesset in Tveria. They used to go ahead and say it was mutter. They were noig like Rabbi Yosi, and then ad Shabbat Rabbi Gamliel v'Hezekanim v'Asulan. Until Rabbi Gamliel and the Zekanim came, they said no, you should be machmer like Rabbi Eliezer. And Rabbi Yosi Amir Isser Nagubo. He actually says no, opposite. By the way, he said Isser Nagubo. Actually, they used to hold that it was Aser. And then the Rabbi Gamliel and the Zekanim came, and they said no, it's mutter. To go ahead and use it like my own shita. So that was the Mishnah. Sazak the Gemara, Benita ba'agdo. If we're talking about a case where it's tied, this bolt is tied to the door, and it's hanging with a rope, which is strong enough to hold the bolt, then nobody argues here. Everyone says that's considered to be a kli, that's not considered to be bona, and therefore, since you're using a kli, it is mutter to go ahead and use it. So kipligi, what is, in other words, that's when it's fastened to the door, by a rope. However, kipligi, when do they argue? Top of page of Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, ksheina nitzel. In other words, when it's basically not tied with a strong rope. One holds that there's Rabbi Yosi that held that since it's not, since it has on its end a knob that you can hold it like a handle, therefore it's considered to be a kli, and therefore the kli it's mutter to go ahead and lock the door with his bolt. Or Marsavar came in and it says no, since it's not attached with a rope, therefore it's not considered to be a kli, and therefore it'll be usher to go ahead and use it. Fine. Zuk, the next Mishnah. Neger hanigra nolim baba mikdash. If you have a bolt that's dragging, in other words, it's attached, it's dangling, nolim, you can go ahead and use it in the mikdash, Medina, but not in the Medina. Now you can't go ahead and use it in the Medina outside the base of mikdash because it's a shvus and we hold it's aser. V'hamunach kan v'kan, but if it's just lying there, no, it's just off to the side, then it's aser. Then it's aser. Now we're talking about over here, right? We discussed one that was dangling or hanging. Over here, we're talking about that it is tied, as Rashi says, shakasher bedelis, aval eno tolu, right? But it's not hanging. Shachavel aruch, right? The rope is long, right? Umitoch shenigra ena nira kakasher, and since it's long, right? It's attached. It doesn't look like it's attached. We're talking about one without a bolt at the end. Excuse me, without a knob at the end. Fine. So that was the case talking about, but so he says machlokes in the case of where it's attached, but there is no knob and it's not hanging. But if it's just sitting in the corner, not attached at all, then not only in the Medina, not only outside the base of Mikdash, but in the base of Mikdash, this would be usher because it would be like bona. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer, hamunach mutar b'mikdash. No, even if the bolt is not attached and it's lying there over there in the corner, just designated to use for a closing, for locking the door, then that is mutar. That's only a shvus, and shvusim are mutar in the Mikdash. Nigra Medina, and also the case of the Nigra, that which you say we were talking about, one which was fastened, despite the fact that it doesn't have a handle or a knob, since it's attached to it. So therefore, we say that is considered to be mutter even in the Medina. So Zok the Gemara, Taner Rabban. What is the type of nigra bolt, right? That a hanging bolt that was in the mikdash is mutar v'lo medina. So kol shekasher v'tayla b'roisho, right? V'roish echad megil aretz, right? Anything that's tied and one of its ends are basically touching the ground, right? So that is mutar in the mikdash, but it's aser in the Medina. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer, zeh af Medina mutar. No. Even the Medina, if it's hanging, right? If it's not too long, if it's hanging, then it's definitely considered to be mutter. Rather, what is the type of neger? Both they can use the mikdash of a love Medina, but it's not used in Medina. In other words, what is the difference between Medina, a case of the mikdash and the Medina? Kol she'eno loy kasher v'loy toli. Anything, if it's not tied, right? There's no knob, right? It's not attached, it's not hanging. And they go ahead and they put it in the corner. Since they go ahead and it's designated for use, so nevertheless in the Medina it's aser, but in the base of mikdash, special heter that there is the shvusim don't apply there, and therefore it'd be mutter. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halach Rabbi Yehuda, lachas Rabbi Yehuda ben Nigra, right? In the case that it is indeed hanging, if it's attached, then it would be mutter to go ahead and use it off the Medina. And Amar Rabba v'hu shekasher v'delis. And we're only talking about if it's tied to the door as opposed to the doorway or to the frame. So, Aini, is this true that it has to be only if it was tied, as long as it's tied to the door, it's not attached, let's say, to the frame? One time, Rabbi Tavla was in mechuzah. And he saw that he was basically putting it, basically the bolt was tied, attached to the rope to the door frame. And he didn't say anything to him. No, he didn't say this is us. It doesn't have to be attached to the door. It can be even attached to the door frame. So my answer is, no, that was talking about a case of where basically it was on a strong enough rope that if you hold up the rope, that this bolt wasn't too heavy, and therefore the bolt was considered to be a kli because it was something which was attached by a rope. And Rav Avi was once in Hardia. He saw that he was it was attached with a reed, which is not a strong rope. And he says this to me is not considered to be something which is tied up, because since the rope is weak and you can't really hang the bolt from it, it will fall off, right? It's too heavy. Therefore, that doesn't qualify as being tied. So nikmaz mahu. So nikmaz, if the bolt was all the way in the ground, when you put it in, I guess it came all the way in the ground. Nikmaz mahu. So Rav Yosef, mighty boile. I understand what's the kasha. Lo yishmi laha hadatan. You never heard that which you heard in the brayso. Nishmat aser. If you have a case of where that basically it came off the door, then it's aser. And nikmaz mutter. And if it goes ahead and nikmaz, if it went all the way into the ground, then it's mutter to go ahead and use. It's not a problem. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer, nikmaz af abishan and nishmat aser. Now nikmaz, even if it's attached, if it goes all the way into the ground, submerges into the ground, even if it's tied, that's considered to be you're basically fastening something into the ground, which is like bona, like building into the ground, and therefore aser. Rabbi Yehuda Mashmuel, halach Rabbi Yehuda. It says the halach is like Rabbi Yehuda, but nikmas. The halach is like Rabbi Yehuda in nikmas. The time of my. All right, so now there'll be aser, and what's the reason? Because it appears like bona one is building. So boy mine Rav Nechumi bar Zachariah may Abaye. So Rav Nechumi bar Zachariah asked from Abaye. If you make a handle to this bolt, what is the halacha? Samarle buchra kamarta, right? Basically, this is considered to be a pestle, right? This is something that basically is now used, right? A pestle is basically similar to that. It has a handle, and I guess you use it to go ahead and break things down. So too, same thing as the bolt, and therefore this is now basically mutter. And itama amaram nechumi bar ada also besyad mutter. Somebody said if you make a handle, then it's mutter. And Hoshiras Dahavi Be Rabbi Pedas Dahavi Madlula Yasar. Right, there's once a long beam in a house which could only be carried by 10 people. The Shadalu Adasha, and they placed it. They went ahead and they carried it, and they placed it behind the door to lock the door, so the door would not be able to open. V'loy Amar Luhu V'loy Midi. And he didn't say it's usher. He didn't say it's any violation that it's muksa. So why is that? So Amar Torah is kli Allah, right? It's considered to be a kli by the fact that they can go ahead and they can sit upon it. So since they can go ahead and sit upon it, that is considered to be something which is a kli, and therefore it's not considered to be muksa. Hahi asisa dahavi be mar shmuel dahavi mechazekes aderiva. So there was an asisa, right? There was a mortar, I guess a large, a mortar that which can contain, right, a riva, which is basically a half of I'm just going to Rashi for a second, right, which can hold, right, chatzi kur, right, half a kur, right, which is 15 saw. It's a very large mortar. Right, and Shara Mar Shmuel and he permitted also to go ahead and put it by the door. So Amar Torah clear. Once again, he said it's a kli, even though it's very large, but since it can be used as a mortar, therefore it's a kli, and one is allowed to go ahead and use a kli to lock a door. So therefore, all these cases that I had with the rope, all these cases that we had with a handle, right? These are all cases when you make it into a kli, and therefore a kli is not used for bona. And since a kli is not used for building, right? There's a machlokes, we'll see later on about whether it is binyan by kalim or not. So since this is a kli, therefore it's not something which is one would be chayiv for bona. Fine, 2 dots, third wide line. Sholachle Rami Bar Yecheskel Ravamam Nimalon Mar Malin Milia Mili Maliosa Damartala Mishmei Derv Asi Bekifi Darba. So he said to Rami Bar Yecheskel, to Ravamam, they said, oh, why don't you tell us something that was said in the Rav Asi regarding a Kifi Darba, right? Regarding a boat basically that was turned over. So imagine you have, let's say, the bottom of a ship. Let me just take a picture here. And you have, right, it's like open on the bottom, right? Just imagine it's like almost like upside down, right? So it's, or whatever. So then you have all these loops going over it. So tell us about these arches that go over regarding a boat. So Shalachle Hachi Amar Ravasi, this is what Ravasi said. Hani Kifi de Arba, Bisman Sheish Ben Tefach, if each arch, right, is already a tefach wide, all right, that's already considered to be an ohel, right? The halachas by ohels has to be at least a tefach wide, so that's considered to be an ohel. So if you have a bunch of arches that are many ohels above you, inami, or ein behem tefach ve'ein bezev shloisha, right? Or even if the width of each arch is less than a tefach, right, but they're within 3 tefachim of one another, in order that we can say lavud. Lamachar, maybe machzelos aparisalehem. You can go ahead and take a tarp or something, a mat, and put it over them, right? You're not allowed to make an ohel on Shabbos. No, since you already have an ohel, right? Either they're all tefachim, and therefore their tefachim is already considered to be a roof, or since we say lavud, therefore it's considered to be roofed. You're allowed to go ahead and put it on. So my time, what's the reason? Ma'isif al raihu, right? B'shap your dummy. It's only considered to be you're adding to an ohel, to a temporary ohel. And since you're adding to a temporary tent, it's permitted to do on Shabbos. And Hanu de Kiri de Havi le Rav Huna. So Rav Huna had these, I guess, sheep. And Diamama by Tula Vialaila by Avira. Right, during the day they need to be covered. It was hot, so they needed to be under a roof in the shade. But during the night they needed the fresh air. So also the comment the Rav came for Rav. So I'm like Zil Karech Budaya Vishal Be Tefach. Go ahead. Take a mat, roll it up, and put it on top. So it's already a tefach. Now remember, a tefach is already ohel. So there already is an established ohel before Shabbos. And lamachar, and tomorrow when the sun comes out and is beating down, you want them covered. Pashto ma'isiv al arayu v'shapir dami. It's basically you can go ahead and roll it out and cover the rest of the area, because all you're doing is you're adding to a temporary ohel. Adding to a temporary ohel is mutter. And amar mishum Rabbi Chia vilon mutter l'ntaiso. You're allowed to go ahead and put up a partition, a sheet to hang it up as a wall. Umuta the park of Shabbos, or take it down on Shabbos. And kilas chason, right? Like a tent, or like not a teepee, but like a tent, right? Picture. Actually, there's the picture in the Rashis, right? Those are pictures of the tents, right? So there's a tent, right, like that. Those called the kilas chasonim. It's like they used to basically oftentimes they would have it over a bed, right? You would have a single bar over bed, and then it would be covered, like a triangle. So kilas chasonim muter leparka untaisa b'Shabbos. You're allowed to go ahead and put it up and take it down on Shabbos because you're not making ohel, right? It's pointed at the top. However, Amar Rav Sheshes Berei Rav Yidis, going to be three qualifications. Lo Amron Ella She'ein Begaga Tefach. First of all, you can't have a tefach with on top. So if there is, it goes up, right? And then on top, there's a tefach there. Once you do that, now you're making an ohel of a tefach over you, and therefore that'll be forbidden. Also, and even if there's no tefach, lo amron ela she'ein bepachos, right? Follow the words, right? She'ein bepachos mishlosha samach legag tefach. Then you don't have. Now remember, all at the top, it's it touches, right? When you get a little below, it starts to spread out more and more as to depending on the angle of the triangle, right? So if within 3 tefachim of the top, okay, if you take a snapshot, right, at 3 tefachim from the top, are the 2 walls or the sides within 1 tefach of each other? If they're within 1 tefach of each other, then the entire part on top is basically considered to be enclosed, right? It's considered to be enclosed of a tefach, and therefore it's considered to be an ohel. However, if it's wider apart, right? So, excuse me, if it's really close, then it's okay, right? But once it comes wider, then it's a tefach, right? So it says lo amran ela she'ein b'pachas mishlosha samach legag tefach. As long as you don't have a tefach from there, avayesh pachas mishlosha b'samach legag tefach. But if it's at least a tefach wide, 3 tefachim from the top of the point of the this canopy, right? Samach legag, then it's aser. And also another qualification, even if it's less on the top of a tefach, from 3 tefach on the top, nami lo amran elo she'ein v'shifua. No, forget the page, right? Elo shifua tefach, right? You don't have the entire, right? The entire angle at the bottom, right, is a tefach, right? If it's more than a tefach wide, all right, so now basically we're coming to something which is very, very unrealistic for a person to be in, because in other words, the 2 sides from the middle, right, and the middle can't be more than tefach, right? So the middle is less than tefach, and the 2 sides are both also within a tefach, all right? So basically it's within 3 by 3, right? It's completely within 3 tefachim. So in such a case, if it's very narrow, right, that when it comes down basically straight down, that it's not more than a tefach from the edge, then it'll be mutar. Then it'll be like a tent, because once you start widening the angle on top and then you go out farther, it's no longer considered to be a wall, but it's now a roof, right? Because you really think about it, right? When you're in a tent, right, you're under something. You're not in between something. It's not walls, right? You're underneath something. So if it's a little wider, then you're underneath it, right? So the question is, how can a person ever use such a case? Rashi points out, right, a person can't really fit within 3 tefachim to lie underneath. So basically, he has it. Rashi has a little picture there. The art school's picture is a little better. I'll show in a second. But basically, that it goes up, and then the angles keep going where it's all less than a tefach. Those of you that Rashi can see the picture of Rashi, and art school has a picture like that. So that would also be a case of kilas chasana. Fine. Sign is shari, to wear a hat, right? A hat, a felt hat, right? It's called platry. Rashi brings down, right? It's mutter to go ahead and it's mutter to wear on Shabbos. So we have a price that says wearing a hat is also. So this felt hat, like depends on the brim, right? If the brim is a tefach, then it's considered to be an oil, right? All right. If there's no tefach, it'll be mutter. Elamiata. A person goes ahead and wants to temporarily puts his coat over his head, right? Let's see, to protect himself from rain. So that would be aser, right? That doesn't make sense for something to wear a tefach, something over your head is aser. Now, right? Depends how well it's attached, right? If it's attached properly, it won't blow off. It won't blow off or fall off. Then he won't come to carry it. But if it's something that easily falls off his head, then it will be an issue because he might go ahead and carry it. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Mishnah says, Machzirin sir hatachta b'mikdash v'loy b'medina. You can go ahead and return and put back the pivot, right? In the bottom, let's say you have a doorway, right? It has a pivot so the doors can swivel, right? So machzirin sir hatachta b'mikdash v'loy b'medina. You can, so the bottom ones you're allowed to go ahead and put back, but not only in the base of Mikdash, but not in the Medina. Elyon, the top one, kan v'kan aser, but the top one, both of them are aser, right? Because that is that since when the top one falls out, then it's near a kabina. That's similar to bona. Therefore, if there is a binyan, there is binyan b'kelim, then we say it's aser not only in the Medina, but even aser in the base of Mikdash. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ha'elyon b'mikdash v'hatachta. He says no. The elyon you can even go ahead and do it. There is no binyan b'kelim. This is no binyan b'kelim. It's only a shvus. Therefore, it's mutter b'mikdash. And the bottom one, the tachton, even in Medina, it's mutter. So zok Gemara Tanur Rabbanan Tzir Delas Shida Teva Migdal. So if you have basically this pivot, it's on something which is like something which is movable, right? Such as the door to, let's say, a cabinet or a closet or some sort of container. So b'mikdash, if it's in the mikdash machzir, and then you can go ahead and put it back because it's a keli. And Medina, however, if it's out in the Medina, not in the base of mikdash, then you can go ahead and you can go. You're allowed to go ahead and push it back in, but you can't do anything more than that. And va'el in the top one, kan v'kan lo yachzir gzeir shemitaka. But if it's the top one, then you can't go ahead and put it back because you might come ahead and hammer it away, which would be a deraisa. If he goes ahead and does hammer it in, then it's chayv chatas. However, if the door was shalbur of a pit, v'shal dus, v'shal yitzia, of some sort of a cavern or some sort of item which is attached to the ground, it's not a kli, but rather attached to the ground, then lo yachzer, you can't go ahead and put it back. He goes back, and even if it's the tachton, then it's considered to be a deraisa, and one would be chayv chatas. Fine. Next Mishnah. Machzirin retia b'mikdash. One is allowed to go ahead and return a retia, right? A bandage in the base of mikdash, right? Return a bandage in the base of mikdash. Let's say a kohen, he has a wound on his hand and he has to do smicha and put his hands on the animal. So he has to go ahead and remove his bandage. So machzirin retia b'mikdash v'lo b'medina, but you can't go ahead and put it back in Medina, right? Because one is not allowed to go ahead and apply the bandage because one might go ahead and smoothen out a bandage, which would be machik, right? Right. One goes shemimach hartia, right? Person, right. So one might go ahead and be machik and go ahead and smoothen out. However, im betchila, if he's going to go ahead and so that was talking about machzirin, right? Putting a bandage back on, returning it on, or moving it over. However, im betchila, if you're putting on one in the first place, then kan v'kan aser. Then even to put on the chachila is aser, right? Because over there, then you don't. That's not for tzarch gavoa, as Rashi points out. It's only the tzarch atzma, and therefore, even in the mikdash, it would be aser. So, Tanur Rabbanan retia sheparshim al gabi maka. So, if you have a bandage and it fell off from a wound, machzirin b'Shabbos, you can go ahead and return on Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, and Rabbi Yehuda describes it. If it slides down, you can push it back up. Lamala, if it slides up, then you push it down. Umegala migtzas harti, you can go ahead and open up or reveal part of the bandage, and clean it, and piyamaka and clean the wound. The chayzer megala, then go back and cover it up. Migtzas megala migtzas ritia mekaneach pihamaka, right? You go ahead and also then even you can move the bandage a little bit, and in order to go ahead and wipe the wound, right? Uratia atzma, and the wound, the bandage itself, leikanech, but that you can't go ahead and clean up or wipe down, right? And because that over there is considered to be smoothening, right? The marech chayv chatas. He goes ahead and smooths it out, then one would be chayv chatas for that. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. That said, you're allowed to go ahead and put it back on, but you can't go ahead and clean off the bandage. And Amar Rav Chiza Loishana Ela Shapirsha Gabi Kli. We're only talking about you can go ahead and be machzir the bandage if it falls on a kli. Aval Pirsha Al Gabi Karka, but if it falls on the ground, Divra Kol Asr, then it's like considered to be putting on a new bandage. And Amar Rav Ashi Havi Kamina Kameda Abba one time was before Abba Naflu Abba Sadia. And one time his bandage fell off and it fell on a pillow. So it didn't fall to the ground, it fell on a pillow. The Kamahadir lay and he put it back. So Amina lay. So I said to him, you don't know that which was said. The machlokes if it falls on a kli. If it falls on God's aser. But Amar Shmuel said over there, halacha k'Rabbi Yehuda. Right? He said over there, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. So in other words, why would you go ahead? Even to be machzir would be problematic. So Amarle, Lo Shemili, he said, no, I never heard that. No, Klamar, Lo Svirli. No, it's not that he didn't hear it. Rather, he heard it. He just argued and he said that if it falls on a kli, since it didn't touch the ground, but only on a kli, then it would be mutter to go ahead and put it back. All right, we'll stop here at the Mishnah. So tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem will continue here. So.